granddad kind of worked on stuff all the time, and this used to be his little shop, and yeah, so it's kind of a family home, so it's really nice. Most early works I sort of I did with him, yeah, and kind of worked with him to make them possible. I think most of my work's really been looking at a whole number of different things, but I think a lot of it's really looking at quite specifically the notion of communities and individuals, and that sort of trying to visualise something that perhaps isn't there. So that idea of looking at how people operate within communities and how people are defined by communities, but then again how communities are defined by individuals. So it's this kind of bizarre dichotomy that is constantly played out. And I guess I've sort of been interested a lot in using light for those metaphors, that idea of light producing bodies of light and then overlapping those light bodies and seeing what happens. So you get this communal light effect, but you can see the individual lights, but you can't really determine who's illuminating who and what's illuminating everything. Most of those ideas are really sort of coming out of my experiences as being, coming from an urban Aboriginal, community point of view, trying to figure out where I belong in that system, and then also tracing back my particular family history and looking at some of the cultural signifiers within those sort of cultural groups. So that's where I guess a lot of those patterns come up. That's where a lot of those shapes and repetition start to emerge, which I start, applying the lights to. And I think that's when a lot of people try and compare Aboriginal work, especially from some key artists who are working in such a minimal context, and try and compare that to minimalism. I think that's where some of the hiccups start occurring, because I sort of talk about it in that same way. It's like when you cook, when you want to make a stock, you reduce it down. So you're reducing something down. So you're taking all these ideas, all these narratives, all these stories, and you're kind of just reducing it down to this sort of, this fantastic stock that you can kind of apply to any dish. Everything starts collapsing and reducing more and more and more, but the stories become bigger and bigger and bigger, and the narratives and the possibilities and the ideas just become immense. But everything's getting reduced down. It's that amazing process. Quite interested in how light can perhaps intrude on space and in particular forms. And so I'm interested in making barrels of light type thing, sort of taking fluorescent tubes and creating quite round, just rounded forms, which sit quite independently of spaces. The challenges in making artworks is reality, probably, is the biggest hold-up. So you kind of spend most of your time conceptualising a project, and I guess most of the time it's that notion of material and how well you know your material, and for me, I've been working with that sort of material for a while now, so I was really confident in what I was doing. And it's like that process before that, when in the process of making one thing, you start developing the next one, and you kind of put your hand on those materials and you know them. And each time you do an artwork, you kind of push that material to the next level, perhaps. So if I'm using quite raw materials, I guess I'm interested in making them as slick as possible, or smooth as possible, because they're quite raw. Any good storyteller, any good artist, anyone tells a story that is said or told with compassion, with conviction, with grace. And I think that's just a good storyteller. That's a good artist. That's art.